Hi, and welcome to Mythbusters. My name's Ian Pike. I'm a cloud solution architect working in the customer success unit. I'm going to be talking about the myth, what is DevOps for the data? So, looking at DevOps, what is it and how does it sort of go into this myth? What we're trying to understand is, is DevOps just for developers? And I've, sort of been looking around these tools for quite a while. And I think there was quite a big sort of take up of these tools quite a while ago. But I think there's a lot of customers starting to talk more about these now and what tools can they use when they're looking at their SQL databases, for example, or their sort of cloud development processes, and what tools can you use that we have in the Microsoft stack to help you do that. Some of the tools we're going to talk about is Azure DevOps, and we're also going to talk about source control, database projects inside Visual Studio, and also can you sort of do DevOps with SSIS projects, and are there other third-party tools out there that can help you do this? So what I've put together is sort of a few demos to sort of understand where do you need to start with this. So what I'm going to do is walk you through those. What should you do first? Well, getting your database into source control is a good point to start at, and that can be done in Visual Studio using the database projects. This is quite a simple process to sort of set up in the beginning, and Visual Studio now comes with the data projects pre-installed when you install Visual Studio from the beginning. If not, you can go into the background settings and use that to install it. It's also thinking about, are you going to start doing DevOps on a new project or a legacy project? I'd recommend doing this on a new project to start with, as you don't then have to learn all the things about DevOps, and also looking at what the legacy projects may bring, which may sort of bring some problems to sort of solve as well. So going through a new project and building that out is a good way to understand how you're going to build out a DevOps project and then deploy to the cloud with that. It then means once you've got that process sort of bedded in with your whole team and things, then it's easy to move onto more of a legacy project, which may have some issues that you need to sort of go through. This is getting the process right before tackling bigger projects. So we're going to go through looking at this from a Visual Studio point of view. I've got a test database that I've pulled in already into source control. So this is inside Visual Studio, and we've got a test project which we've already pulled in. But if I minimize this and then start, I can go add project, go new project. And what I can select here is a SQL database project. If I click on this and then do Mythbusters, do create, this will create me a new project. So I'm going to take my database, I'm going to go import database. This will let me choose a database that I wish to take, which is existing. So I could go into all of my databases, go test database, do connect. And then do start. This goes off to the database that's already been built and then pulls all the objects that are inside there, so the logins, the stored procedures, and the tables. That will go through and then pick all that data up. So this is one way of doing this for existing databases, or you could just go and create a brand new schema and start importing the data from that, and then doing that. So if I cancel that, because that's going to take a little bit of a while, I'll do a Blue Peter, and here's one I prepared earlier. So this is one I've imported, and this has got all the tables that I've got inside this database. Looking at design in here, I've got all the tables with all the data types, etc. I could start changing all of these, and this is now the schema model of my database. Once I finish making some changes, or I can add something to this, I can do new field. I can save this. And because I've set this up in source control, I can now actually then go and build this. And Visual Studio is building my project. As you can see, that build has succeeded. So that means I've got the Visual Studio building my source control, I'm bringing this together inside there. I can now go and deploy this if I wanted to. So I can go back, go down to deploy, or I can go source control, and I can actually get source control to publish this out for me. I can, if I wanted to publish this, I can publish it straight to the source, to the SQL server that I've got. Or if I wanted to, because I've set up some Git repository to hold all of the information, I can check these changes in. And if I commit all of these, this will go off and actually go out and build this. I'll do this again in a minute because I want to show you as part of a future demo. But this is source control inside Visual Studio. As you can see, you can have all your objects inside this. So I've got my sales schema, sales LT schema with my tables, my views, etc., and security. And then once this is built out, we can then start deploying this to our SQL Server, which could be on-prem or in the cloud. And the properties on the project. I can deploy this to an Azure SQL DB, SQL Server 2019, which could be on-prem or on a VM, SQL Server Data Warehouse. So there's lots of different types of databases that we can put under source control. I'm going to cut back to the slides now and talk a little bit more about some of the things that you can do in DevOps for data. Okay, once you've checked in your database and you've got this under source control, the next thing to try and do is build a pipeline, which will include some new phrases called continuous integration and continuous deployment. This means that your database will be deployed for you, and then once you make changes, it's automatically pushed out to multiple environments. So this is where you can deploy to test, development and production. This means that once you do this once, this process is built and it's constantly automated in the background. So you don't have to worry about deploying to these environments. You can get your team all bought into this process. This will help, sort of meaning that there's one central place to do all of this, rather than people doing sort of changes on the database, but also then people doing changes inside the source control, because then that can get quite messy. The best thing to do once you've got source control is that you'll have to learn about merges and how the team can work together to do this. So what I'm going to do now is going to show you a quick demo of once you've got your source control checked in, pushing this and then it being built out as part of a pipeline in Azure DevOps. We're going to go and check a change in now, and then we're going to go and see it push through a pipeline and then being deployed into a SQL database. So what I'm going to do is go back to my Team Explorer, go to this change, the added field, and I'm going to commit all and push this to my repository. This is now pushing this to the repository. This has been pushed into my Azure DevOps project that I've set up. Now I've got a repo on here where you can see my commits that are being committed to the database. This is the one I've just added. What this is doing is taking that change and building out this change on the Azure DevOps server. What you can see, I've also got some pipelines, which actually then go and build out that change that's been checked in. So as you can see, that new added field is being built out. If I click into this, show you an agent job is now building this. So first thing it will do, like you're on-prem in your Visual Studio, it will build out the project and make sure it builds. As you can see some of the stages that it's going to go through on the side of that. If I go to releases, you can see I've got one release in here, which is going to show me then how this is going to be pushed out. So it's going to deploy the DB and then do that. So if we go back to the pipelines, it's currently running this. It's currently still building the Visual Studio. So this will then move to a next stage, drop anything that's already been built in deployment. And hopefully release this database. Waiting for this pipeline to go through. So all this can be done and set up for different environments. So you could do this, flag these into dev, then once they've been completed, they can be pushed into test and then pushed out to production. So the release phase has started, as you can see on here, release 5. So this agent job is now going to deploy this database. It's going to take a little bit longer. There's obviously some few things running at the same time. So you could have multiple jobs running at the same time. So you could have this deploying your database, but you could also look at how you could deploy infrastructure at the same time. This could be doing this over the weekend and pushing out different things and testing. So you could have multiple branches doing lots of different things for you. So this is going to do the DAC pack. It's going to then look at deploying the changes to the database for us and then adding that field. So what I can do is go and find Visual Studio, or actually in the SQL Server Management Studio, we can go and have a look at the database and check this is deploying this for us. So these are tools that a normal DBA or a SQL developer will be used to using to go and check some of this has been done. Go and connect to the server, databases, so test database, go to tables, go to product, make sure this is refreshed, columns. You can see that new field's been added at the end. So this has deployed all these changes without me having to get involved. So you could do some gates on this to ensure that the changes are being checked before they go out. But this has then deployed this automated for me, so I didn't have to then go and build some scripts. This is done also in the background. What to think about next? So as part of DevOps for Data, you could start thinking about unit testing for your solutions. That means that you can unit test stored procedures or the data that's inside the tables. So if you add some data into your deployments, that means that you can then start unit testing those so that tables are fulfilled in your dev and test environments, and then before they are deployed to production, you've built out the unit testing to prove that these work as part of your build. You can start to extend your deployments to include infrastructure. So that means as part of the pipeline, you can go up and spin up servers as part of that, or you could build out a SQL server or some storage accounts that then are part of that whole process and then included in that deployment. Once you've got this base, you can start modernizing your solutions and swapping out parts because you're confident that you've built out this solution, and then you're able to deploy and then roll back as required. So that means that you have got a base to work on and start looking at new features like Azure Data Factory, etc., to build on. I hope these has helped you understand some of the DevOps for Data and shows that it's just not for .NET guys and developers. It means that the developer using data is able to build out solutions on this. Thanks for listening.